from what I understand, there was some infidelity, and that in turn had a lot to do with quote unquote the ruminating that affected you. But it wasn't necessarily an actual person, it was just porn. So is that necessarily considered cheating?
It's like if I could explain what I thought of my husband. To me, he, years before, he was the provider, he was the man. I didn't see him, looking at other women. And I know men look. I felt that, him looking at those pictures of that lady named Liz, that is what he wanted. It made me all of a sudden, I felt ugly. I didn't feel desire. I didn't feel that he desired me. I felt like he cheated, even though he didn't physically cheat. To me, he should have, because that would have made me say, okay, I'm leaving him right now.
Man, I got a special guest for you guys today, and a very, very special show. Welcome back to the Jahmad Show. If this is your first time, welcome to the show. Today we're talking about depression, something that's big in our country, across the world, but especially within the Black culture. And I have a very, very special guest who has written a book on her experience that's available on Amazon right now. Keep My Enemy Closer, if I'm not mistaken. Mrs. Kamara Mikel. Did I say the book title correct?
Nope.
What was the name of the book title?
Okay, it's called Kept My Enemy Closer.
Kept My Enemy Closer. We're going to still keep that in there.
That's fine.
Kept My Enemy Closer. It's available on Amazon. And she actually, I was very, very excited for this interview for many, many reasons. Number one, she found me on TikTok, which I'm greatly appreciative of. I think it's dope that you have two Black people in two different spaces to come together and be able to express. I think that's the definition of Black excellence. But at the same time, it shows the importance of networking. And she had a very, very great story that I thought was, we had to share. So without further ado, I would love to dive into it. How did you come up with the book, and how did the realization of depression begin?
With the book, when I was first diagnosed back in 2005, there was nothing about a book. So when I was diagnosed, after a while, my therapist thought that it would be therapeutic for me to journal. So at that time, I was journaling, and I didn't start right away. So this happened after some time, maybe about after the first year or so. She was like, have you started journaling? I'm like, no, I haven't. She said, I just think it would be really good for you to do. So there was no thought about a book. There was nothing that I would have, gone, okay, well, it's enough. I can write a book. I was literally trying to hold on to life. There was no point of, I thought that a book would be coming out of this. That was many, many years later.
Which I think is very interesting. I think, first of all, I think it's very amazing the fact that you're being as vulnerable as you are and sharing your story with the world. But at the same time, to put it in book form, I think it's a genius from a marketing standpoint, but at the same time, you're helping a ton of people by doing so.
Thank you.
But what gave you the courage to actually say, you know what, instead of just journaling, let me put this in book form and now create the identity as an author?
Yeah. Like I said, she thought, my therapist was like, this would be good for you to start journaling. And I'm sure she told me that. I don't remember, but she would tell me, she said, this was years later. She was like, you know what? She said, when you first came into therapy, she said, you were really skinny and frail. She said, and for the first 6 months, I would just go into her office, sit down. She said I cry from the start until the end of the session. She said,
Wow.
and that went on for at least the first 6 months.
Okay.
So a book, nope, just trying to survive.
We need to be able to be transparent in today's climate. I think there's a lot of things that people don't talk about. So I commend you for actually stepping out there and talking about this. One thing I do want to touch on is you mentioned ruminating. I looked at your TikTok, I did some research. I don't necessarily know what that means. I don't know if the world know what that means. Can you explain to us what that is, how it affected you?
So ruminating, I had never heard of that word until I was in therapy. And the pictures that I saw that I didn't know my then husband was looking at, it was porn, but this part of it was just pictures. So ruminating.
Wait. I'm gonna cut you off right there. So you're talking about your husband was watching porn.
Right.
Okay. So okay, continue.
Okay. So the ruminating was me seeing those pictures of a girl named Liz, a Black woman. I still remember exactly what she looked like. So
Wow.
in my brain, okay, I was stuck. All I could see. Wow. Yeah. So just think, when I go to sleep, I'm hardly sleeping because my mind won't shut down. So ruminating, as I understand it, is literally your brain is stuck and you can't move past something. So it's like a barrier, and it's like you could go around in a circle. My brain only thought about those pictures, her name and face, and what my husband must have felt looking at her and lusting over her. So yeah, ruminating was, like I said, it was something I'd never heard of in my life, but I was stuck because her image was burned into my brain.
From what I understand, there was some infidelity, and that in turn had a lot to do with, quote unquote, the ruminating that affected you. But it wasn't necessarily an actual person, it was just porn. So is that necessarily considered cheating?
It's like if I could explain what I thought of my husband. To me, he, years before, he was the provider, he was the man. I didn't see him, looking at other women. And I know men look. I felt that, him looking at those pictures of that lady named Liz, that is what he wanted. It made me, all of a sudden, I felt ugly. I didn't feel desire. I didn't feel that he desired me. I felt like he cheated, even though he didn't physically cheat. To me, he should have, because that would have made me say, okay, I'm leaving him right now. But what he did was like so in the middle, and my life with him wasn't perfect, but you couldn't have told me that my husband would have cheated on me. So when I saw those pictures, it was like a fact that, that, oh no, he doesn't really want to be with you. You're ugly. You're too skinny. You're not smart enough. So I took all of that on in my own brain with the ruminating, because that's all that I could think about was her face, her name, and what happened, and what his desires must have truly been, wanting her and not me.
I think that's very interesting, especially in today's culture. Porn has been normalized. Women and men watch it. So I'm sure there's multiple people from both sides that feel the same way you feel. How has that affected the dating climate for you?
Well, I am completely single. And when I say that, I'm dating, but I'm not dating any guy in particular. I'm just out there. But I know a couple of guys, like I'm on Bumble. So I know a couple of guys that have, into me saying, hi, my Bumble name is Kay. Hi, I'm Kay. Nice to meet you. The guy says, hi, I'm so-and-so. If he says any kind of sexual anything that soon, I automatically unmatch him. So it is just, it's so normalized now. I literally, hopefully I can find a man who is not into the whole porn thing. But if I find any little sexual reference up front like that, I go the other way, because I know the harm that it's caused to me. So I'm not saying, I'm a prude. It's not that, but you don't need to be talking about sex and stuff like that as soon as I'm opening up the conversation. So I just go, you know what? Let me unmatch them. And that's what I do.
It's different. It got to be different, especially anybody jumping back into the dating scheme. I'm a single man myself, 34, going on 35, and I understand how hard it is already. Let's double back to the book for a minute. You take a very unique take on this book. You start from the end chapter, which is chapter 66, and then the book goes to chapter 1. What was the thought process behind that?
There was no real thought process in a sense. When I started writing, I was writing of the most recent depression phase that I was in. So when I started writing the book, I didn't say, you know what, I'm going to do it 66 chapters and then I'm going to, make it descending and go down to 1. It's literally, I just opened the book. My writing was literally those actions that had just happened during that time. And I just started writing. And then at some point, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to write it backwards. So it happened that way. And I just kept it in that structure. I kept the chapters in that structure. So it was like the bad part, and then let's go all the way down through the relationships, the emotions. And then when I end at chapter 1, it's like, oh my gosh, that's how it all got started.
I think that's amazing. Like I said, this book is available on Amazon right now. Is that the only place you can get the book?
Yes, only on Amazon.com, or you can go through my website of KamaraMikelWorldwide.com.
You also have a talent of podcasting. How'd you get into that, or did the book lead into that, or how did that whole thing come about?
With the podcast, so this is during the pandemic. Somebody said, do an audiobook, and I'm like, oh, let me do an audiobook. So right. A friend, recommended this guy to me. His name is Kelly Nunn, and he's a producer, and he lives over in St. Petersburg. So literally, I called him, set up a couple of times, let me go. I did the audiobook, and then somebody mentioned, they're like, well, why don't you have a podcast? I don't know. Why don't I get a podcast? So he's the one that actually also does my podcast. But I don't think it was really anything planned. It was like, okay, this book, okay. And then years later, okay, let me do an audiobook. And oh, by the way, okay, I can do a podcast. Literally, everything is very simplified. I never had this great dream of all of this stuff happening. It just kind of progressively moved along. So, yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about life. That's the beautiful thing about journey. I speak about that a ton in my show, that, obviously you've been through a ton of hardships, and one of them has just been the depression. I'm sure there's been a long list of other things you've dealt with, just like anybody in life. We all go through things in life. We have to overcome them by pushing forward, believing in ourselves, knowing that we can do better. In some cases, a lot of people don't realize, go into therapy. And I've been hearing a lot of talk about that. So that's a beautiful thing that you're actually bringing awareness to that. I want to ask you, have you overcome the depression at this point?
I won't say that I've overcome. I would say that, I have fortitude, and which is why I want to share my story. So to me, with depression, the last huge bout of it was in 2018, which is the chapter 66. So that was the last huge bout. But I can tell you, some days I wake up and I'm just like, I wish I could go back to sleep and forget the world. But I am not, it's been a long journey. I'm still in therapy. This year is 18 years. Initially in therapy, though, I was in therapy for 3 times a week, 3 times per week. Wow. Me sitting in a therapist's office. And I feel that, I still need to be in therapy. So I only go once a month now, and I haven't seen my therapist since COVID, but we do, I think it's called telehealth online. I can talk to her. I can be happy, sad. She's seen me through divorce, marriage, engagements, breakups, crying, fat, skinny. She knows me. I have the same therapist, and she's seen me at every point in my life. So I don't ever want to stop going to therapy, because it's just my private space Nobody's going to judge me. She is not going to judge me. She's going to listen. You know, we have a rapport with one another. We talk. But literally, therapy is, to me, between God and therapy, that is what has kept me, and that changed my life, that I want to live again.
I think that's a beautiful message. What's the mark that you want to leave on the world with writing this book, which you have multiple versions of, and you can shout that out here in a minute. But what's the mark you want to leave on the world? The reason why you are as vulnerable as you've been, and the message that you want to send.
I'm so grateful to not only be alive, I am grateful to want to live. And there were very dark times between 2005 and now that I literally just wanted to give up on life. My vulnerability, I don't mind sharing it because, like I said, I'm happy to be alive. Like, what do I have? What do I have to lose?
Right.
You know, is a guy not going to want to ask me out? Maybe not. But I'm just grateful to be at this point. And my ultimate goal is to travel in the United States and talk to people about my journey with depression.
I love it. Please go support this Black woman and what she's doing in the culture, in America, across the world. Her book is available right now on Amazon.com. I think it's a great message for many people out there who are experiencing the same thing. And if you never knew you were experiencing it, hopefully this book can help you. Please give the people where they can find you, where they can find the book, and all of your social media outlets.
Sure. So my website is Kamara Mikel, Kamara with a K, A-M-A-R-A, Mikel, M-I-K-E-L, worldwide.com. On TikTok, I'm at Kamara Mikel 4. On Instagram, I haven't completely solidified that, so I don't have a following. I haven't done anything to it. And then on YouTube, it's going to be Conversations with a K, Conversations with Kamara. Conversations with Kamara is also the name of my podcast, and it's on Spotify and iHeart. And my book, like he said, is available on Amazon.com or on my website.
This has been another great show, guys. You know what to expect. You get nothing but the real on the Jahmad Show. And it's about people like this who resonate with me and hopefully resonate with you, so we can continue to push the culture forward. As always, man, thank you. Great special guest to Miss Kamara Mikel for joining the Jahmad Show. Thank you. It's a blessing to have you on here. This helps me tremendously. I'm forever grateful. And hopefully people who see this helps you. So once again, we're going to keep the ball rolling. Like, comment, share, subscribe. As always, I got the merch on today, man. Go to thejahmadshow.com. Support the show. Support the cause. It's about love and peace. Go pick up her book. Also, if you want to listen to the podcast, I got it on YouTube Music. If you want to get any advice or any information on my setup, all the links will be down in the description. I love y'all, man. Let's keep the ball rolling. Love. Peace.